Hi, it's Steph. And just 2 short months ago, this area looked absolutely beautiful. And now things are starting to go to sleep for the winter. In today's video, we are going to go through the garden and do the final garden tour of 2022. And as we go through the different areas, we're going to do a comparison of what it looks like now as the garden goes to sleep and what it looked like at different parts throughout the 2022 gardening season. A couple of years ago, we used to have our children's play set right in this area here. And once our children outgrew the swing set, we decided that this would be a great area to start a new garden. Well, at least I decided, and George just came along for the ride. And what we did was we found something that we both enjoyed, which were Japanese maples, and we started what we now call our Japanese maple garden. We began by trying to figure out the outline of the garden and started collecting some cobblestones and some flagstone on Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, OfferUp, and we found some really good deals on materials. So we started working on that last season, but we haven't finished. And so next spring, the goal is to continue to work on this garden and finish the edging as well as some planting where we're letting some of the grass die down where we've smothered it with some cardboard. So this is an ongoing project and one that we are really enjoying. And so I can't wait to get back to this next spring. Moving over from the Japanese maple garden over to these shed beds, we have some beautiful limelight hydrangeas, as well as some Helen von Stein lambsare that I just added this year, and it's quickly becoming one of my favorite perennials. The leaves on this lambsare are ginormous. They are really, really large compared to some of the other varieties of lambsare, and they have a very velvety texture, which is wonderful because not only does it feel nice, but the deer don't like it. They don't like any kind of foliage that's either spiny or furry like this. So they have not touched these. And they have the most beautiful coloring. If you recall, I had bought 3 of these and I was able to divide one of them right out of the container, and I put one here and I put one there, and these didn't miss a beat. We had a really dry, hot summer, and they did absolutely beautifully, and they doubled in size. So I'll be dividing these again in spring and putting them in other areas of the garden. These little lime hydrangeas have quickly become one of my favorite shrubs in my garden. They have such a long season of interest. Starting in late spring, early summer, they emerge a gorgeous shade of pale green, and then they take on a creamy white color. And as we head into mid to later summer, they age to beautiful shades of pink and mauve before turning this bronze color in late fall and early winter. An absolutely outstanding shrub for the garden. Behind these limelight hydrangeas, or these little limes, I also have some Japanese iris. Now these aren't the bearded iris, these are the iris insata. And they're a gorgeous light purple and white iris that blooms in July. This is the first year that I saw their blooms, and they are absolutely beautiful. I bought them in a bag from Longfield Gardens, and I was really happy with them. As we move over from the right side shed bed to the left side shed bed, I have a few other things that also did really well this year and were really beautiful. Starting with my favorite early spring blooming tree that I have in my garden, and it is this Dr. Merrill magnolia. It has the most beautiful white blooms, and they are so fragrant and smell so nice. Once the magnolia is done blooming, it leaves out in really pretty, large, shiny green foliage. And then we have some astilbe that fill out this drift here from the magnolia to the quickfire hydrangea. The astilbe this year were magnificent. A lot of them were actually started from bare root packages from either Walmart or the box stores, and they did amazing. Those bare root plants sometimes take a year or two to pick up, but typically by year 3, they shoot up and do beautifully. And the third plant that looked absolutely gorgeous in this bed this summer was the hardy hibiscus that I had in this corner here where you now just see the trunk. This is a mid to late summer plant, and it will sometimes bloom through the fall. And the variety that I have planted in this corner has a really beautiful dark foliage. It's a proven winner's hardy hibiscus called Perfect Storm. It's a light pink with a dark pink center, a little bit of a creamy white, and they're just really beautiful. And here we are at the patio bed. Over the years, I've worked on adding multi-season interest to this flower bed. And it starts in the spring with some daffodils as well as some alliums. I have some geum, Mai Tai geum, that were really pretty this year. And then all of the coneflowers emerge. Now, if you're new to gardening, perennials, most herbaceous perennials, will die all the way back to the ground at this time of year and go into dormancy for the winter. But then next year, you'll get all new foliage at the bottom or the base of the plant, and then it'll send up its bloom stalks. Now, coneflowers, I have about 5 varieties in this bed now, right around 5, and they are one of my favorite perennials. They are absolutely beautiful, and I actually made a video of my top 5 perennials, which I can link here, where coneflower was my number 1. In addition to coneflower, I have lots of other summer blooming perennials like yarrow and Munstead lavender, as well as some oriental lilies that are called salmon star and are a beautiful apricot color. There are some David Austin roses, as well as some wee white hydrangeas. And this year, the wee white hydrangeas didn't do too well because it was a really hot, dry summer, and this bed gets a lot of sun, and they sort of crisped up on me, but hopefully next year will be a better year for the wee white hydrangeas. The peak of this bed is in July, where it is an absolute riot of color with all of the perennials in bloom. But even now, as we head into the winter, there are still a couple of things offering some interest in this bed. One of them is this sweet flag ogon here in the front. It's a grass-like texture that stays evergreen in this beautiful bright yellow throughout the winter. Now, this bed here is a pretty wet area, and we actually bought material to improve the drainage in this bed, because in the spring and in the fall, when we get a lot of rain, there is quite a bit of standing water that pools in and around this bed. And because of that, I've actually lost quite a few of my really pretty daffodil varieties because the bulbs rot due to being in that moisture. So next spring, along with wrapping up the path and the outline of the Japanese maple garden, we will also use the material that we've already bought to start a drainage improvement project on this garden bed. And this is a continuation of that area we were just looking at where the patio bed is. And this is at the end of our driveway where a lot of the water runoff kind of sits and creates a bit of a standing water situation here when it is in fall and spring where we get more rainfall. And so we decided that it would be a good spot to add a tree for some vertical interest in our yard. And so last spring, George and I went to a local nursery in search of a tree that would be water loving and came across this really pretty multi-trunk Heritage River birch. Now, getting this tree home was a bit of a project. It was a lot bigger than I anticipated, and I had expected to bring it home in our minivan, but that didn't really work out because it was quite a big tree. In fact, we had quite a struggle to get this large root ball into the ground. But we persevered, and he and I together were able to tackle this project and get this beautiful tree planted in our garden. And so far it's done well, and we're heading into our first winter with it. And it actually already has some buds, so it is looking good. And I'm really happy with the way this tree looks, and it was a really beautiful addition to our yard for 2022. Here is one other project we were able to sneak in for the end of the year, and it was a new garden bed. Not too long ago, the only thing here were 2 blood-good Japanese maples. And continuing on the theme of adding water-loving plants, we started with adding 3 red twig dogwoods. They were ivory halo red twig dogwoods. I added 2 willows and a couple of other grasses and an evergreen, and I think that this bed turned out really well. And here we are in the front yard, starting with this bed here, which is what I call my driveway retaining wall bed. I really should come up with a bit more creative name for the gardens, but I haven't gotten there quite yet. This bed here has a hedge of bobo hydrangeas, and like the wee white hydrangeas, these did not do too well this year. The lack of water really browned them up, and they just looked unwell, but typically they do look really beautiful. I have some perennial alliums in here, the amethyst bubbles or lavender bubbles. I always get that confused, but they look really pretty and the pollinators love them. There are also a couple of other perennials in here, a couple of other shrubs, a tiny wine 9-bark that only recently lost its foliage. And a change I made last year, about a year ago this fall, was I replaced a weeping cherry tree that I had right here and added this wintergreen or evergreen interest with this really pretty weeping blue spruce. I think this was a really good change for this corner of this bed. Now as we head over to the main walkway bed, this garden bed had quite a colorful year in the garden. Starting in spring, this bed put on quite a show with a border of tulips that I had planted that I got exactly a year ago now. In the first week of December, I had bought the bulbs at Lowe's on clearance for 75% off. And I planted those tulip bulbs in this bed right along the edge here, along the walkway. And once they started to emerge, it was quite a job. I had to come out here and spray them with deer repellent, invisible fence, deer and rabbit, every few days, just to make sure that those buds would actually give me beautiful blooms. And they did. They sure put on a show, and they were really beautiful. After the tulips, in early June, we had a beautiful display of foxgloves, and this turned into a cottage bed with all of my knockout roses in bloom, some iris, some alliums, as well as the beautiful foxglove. It was really a banner year for the foxglove. I had started them from seed the year before, and then in the beginning of June, they really just shot up and showed off. They were absolutely stunning and so tall. After the foxgloves were done blooming, I went ahead and sowed an entire packet of the Atomic Purple Gomphrena from Baker Creek Seeds. All I had to do was soak them in water overnight, and then I went ahead and tucked 1 seed in every 6 to 8 inches all along the front of this walkway. Those seedlings picked up pretty quickly and grew pretty fast, actually. And by midsummer, I would say by middle of July or so, I had an entire border that was jam-packed with Atomic Purple Gomphrena. Those flowers were so prolific. They just kept going and going. I didn't have to deadhead them or do anything to them. And I had such a full border the whole season, the whole rest of the gardening season. They were just amazing, and an annual that I had never grown before, but they blew me away, and I'll definitely be growing them again and again. And here we are in the last front garden bed. This is what I call the right side bed. and it's on the right side of the house when you look from the street. And this bed is really heavy with spring interest and then summer interest, and it starts in the spring with some iris that I have in this bed. Lots of iris. And also last year I had some lupin that I had started from seed that looked really beautiful also. And then as we transition over to summer, there are lots of daylilies along the front border. I have some cat's pajamas nepeta, some coneflowers, and even some blue globe thistle that I recently started from seed maybe a year ago, and it bloomed for the first time this year. There's some phlox in this bed as well. That looks really pretty. I have like a light purple pink colored phlox that someone had given me. And then just this summer, I was able to find some fashionably early crystal phlox, which is a white phlox with a little bit of a lavender hue, or the eye looks lavender. And I added it to this bed as well, which I think will look really pretty backed up by this Colorado blue spruce, which really becomes quite a statement in the winter. It's always here as a backdrop, but when everything else goes to sleep, the sky really shines. It has gotten pretty cold out here. I had to get a hat and my hands are cold, but with that, we are at the end of the final garden tour of 2022. I hope that you've had as much fun as I have looking back at the gardening year and seeing how the different garden areas have progressed throughout the seasons. Thank you for hanging out, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, please hit the thumbs up button, and please consider subscribing so you don't miss any of my future videos, and we'll see you soon.